Hey, Jimmy, how you doing, man?
Good morning, my brother. 7 o'clock your time. I know Tommy Whitford is not happy with us this morning. I saw on Twitter.
I'll tell you right now, we're gonna talk. We're gonna talk, Jimmy, because it's not only is it 7 o'clock Central Standard. Nobody's watching this thing. Let's be clear about that. But secondly, it's 4 degrees below zero in Fall Creek, Wisconsin, and I want to be really clear about something that's happening. We're saving a ton of money in this school district on the weekends because it's still freezing in this room. I'm just going to tell you that. I didn't want to have my hat on last week, Jimmy. I didn't want to do that. That's not what I wanted, okay? But I couldn't feel my face. And guess what? Here we go again.
That's right.
63.2 degrees in this room. And guess what? By the end of this thing, it'll probably get to 65 with all the hot air I'm about to spew out of this thing. But still, that's cold, Jimmy. It's cold.
Joe, it reminds me of your stories when you used to look at the bike racks with the mongoose and so forth. Now it's about the temperature in your office.
Those bike racks are coming back. I'm just going to tell you right now. And Team Mongoose will be back around. We're going to figure that thing out. I haven't seen that bike for a year and a half, but when that bike comes back, we're going to have a conversation because that thing's terrorizing the whole place. Best Friends Forever, not back, right? Tempest, not back. Lil Bubba, not back. Something happened. Something happened, and I'm going to get to the bottom of it, Jimmy. That's what I'm going to do.
You know, when you were just mentioning that, I have to be really honest. Everybody knows I'm older than you, but not as old as Jeff Zoll. Not even close as old as Jeff Zoll. I mean, I don't have any diapers. I'm not watching Wheel of Fortune. I mean, let's be honest. I'm not going to bed at 6 o'clock. But I did watch, Joe. You ready for this?
Yeah.
Stand By Me.
Did?
The memories that brought back from 1966. Stand By Me.
Hey, I'll tell you that, and I, me as a kid too, I watched that. What a great movie! What a great movie! Yeah, boy, that brought up just you saying that brought up some memories, and wow, that kind of got me more than I would have thought. You know, it's funny that you say that about just that connection to the past. I was in Iowa this week, so I was in Iowa, Northwest Iowa, and we're having a conversation with 3 school districts. And one of the cool things about it is that during the break, somebody had come up to me and talked and told me that we were talking about the impact of moments and every 30-second moments and all that kind of stuff, and what that really means and how we can kind of direct those moments and whatever, that kind of stuff. But she was talking about that she had a student that left. She was a media specialist, had a student that left 2 years ago, and to go to a different school. She didn't really know kind of where she ended up and everything like that. But then all of a sudden this year, she got a letter in the mail from the counselor. I think it was the counselor at the school that the student was at. And the student was asked to write a letter to someone in their past that has had a tremendous impact on their school, and it was her. And so that was cool. So that was the first part that was cool about it, right? That she got a letter from somebody, that she had impacted in the past. But then she was looking through some of her archives in the library, and she had actually been a student at the school that she was that she was at right now, and she saw some things from the librarian that was in the school when she was a kid. So now you've got this like cyclical thing, and then she posted some pictures of those of the past, and then all of her friends from when she was in school started coming out and talking about the old media specialist librarian. She said librarian at the time. I mean, so I think that's the idea that we can really kind of lean into these moments and talk about what they can, the impact that they have. That's pretty cool, and I don't think we do that nearly enough, honestly.
Hey, Joe. When you started talking there, I was almost going to interrupt you, and I was just going to ask you, have you been drinking? I was just worried because I know it's cold in your office, and I thought maybe, just maybe, a shot of liquor would make you feel a little better.
High life, buddy. High life. I'm just excited to talk to you.
You weren't warmed up yet.
I know. On my face, I can't feel my face, Jimmy.
Hey, buddy. I see. Hey, Brian McCann. Good morning from Massachusetts. Good morning,
Brian?
people jumping in. Appreciate you getting up on an early morning here today. If you guys haven't heard, Joe cannot feel his face, so he will warm up here a little bit. So don't worry about that. Joe, it's funny, in the movie last night, I don't know why I can't remember his character's name right now, but it's River Phoenix's character. I'm losing it for a second here, but anyway, it just reminded me when he was talking. They had that scene where he's talking about whether he stole the money or not, right? And that nobody asked him if he stole the money. He says, well, maybe I did, but let's just say I tried to give it back, right? And it was a reminder to us again, he said, because the idea that he gave it back, but the teacher took the money, right?
Yeah.
And the idea is that nobody would have ever believed him. But the thing that hit me the most when he just said, I never believed that a teacher would do that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just a reminder, again, the impact every day that we have as adults in the organization, whether we're a teacher or a staff member of any kind or administrator, whatever our role is that, we do impact lives, right? And you're talking about moments and, we use moments and experiences and how do we create these moments or these experiences, right? That when people walk away from us after our conversation, after our interaction,
Mm-hmm.
Are they carrying our banner? Did we create a moment? Did we create an experience for them that they carry the banner in a positive way, that they walked away and are talking positively? Because it can't just be us in our profession talking about our profession. We have to create these moments and experiences where other people talk about it. And that's when we know when we're doing something right? And that's just a reminder. So when we're interacting with a student or, so students misbehaving or whatever, it's all in how we address that situation with kindness, with respect, with dignity, with compassion, with empathy, right? And it's just a reminder. And yet we all have that ability to quickly lose it because we're tired, we're exhausted, we kind of maybe get elevated or we come across a little hard sometimes. And it's just really interesting. It's just a reminder again. But anyway, it's a great movie. I had a tear or two coming down. Did you know I cried during movies, Joe? Did you know that? I always cry during movies.
I figured you do. You're an emotional guy. I mean, just when somebody steals some of your food, you get real emotional, real quick and angry.
That's a different kind of emotion, Joe. That's
exactly right.
Yeah, I'm not crying there, but
you make a really good point about the interactions and what that really looks like at school. And one of the things that I try to tell people when we get together is that, we talk about this whole idea of every interaction matters because every interaction could be the one that they talk about for the rest of their lives. And the idea that we keep in mind there is that we don't have to love that that's real, but we have to acknowledge that it's real. Right? You don't have to love that every interaction that you have with people, it could be the one that they talk about for the rest of their lives. But as long as you acknowledge that it's real, you treat all those conversations a little bit differently. And I think what we need to understand about kids in our situation and as we walk through schools, one of the things that's really important about that is that, do you ever notice how mad we get with kids when they go home and they don't tell their parents what they did at school? Do you ever notice how mad we like? I can't believe, like, kid goes home from school, mom says, "What'd you do at school today?" And kid says, "Nothing. I don't know," right? And then we get mad at the kid, right? The kid's not going to tell you what they did at school because it often comes with a follow-up obligation of what they have to do at home, right? My kid gets home and I say, "What'd you do in civics today?" And he says, "I did this." My follow-up question is, "You got any homework for that?" Right? So they're not going to tell you what they did at school because it comes with a follow-up obligation of what they have to do at home. But I'll tell you this, they will most certainly tell you what they saw at school, right? Because what they saw at school doesn't come with a follow-up obligation of what they have to do at home. And what they saw at school more often than not is how the adults interact with each other, how the adults interact with their peers, how the adults interact in the day-to-day sense of what happens throughout the course of the hallways, in the classroom, in the cafeteria, in the commons, in the game, all that stuff. Because that doesn't come with a follow-up obligation. And often it's a story. So how do we make sure that we connect those interactions to make sure that the right story is being told?
That's right. So this morning, audience, we're talking about leadership always because we know it's always about leadership. And when we talk about leadership, we're talking about all of you, everyone in the organization being a leader. And so we're going to talk about moments this morning, experiences. So if you are interested in jumping live into the studio and sharing a story, what's a moment or experience that you experienced or encountered that left an impression on you? We'd love to hear that story. Certainly that can't just be Joe and I talking this morning. Last week we had some people jump in. But Joe, I got to tell you, I just saw Shane Greenland's name pop up. Good morning, Shane. Do you know Shane lives in Hawaii?
Yeah, I do. I was just going to say.
You know what time it is in Hawaii right now? Let's do the math. It is 4 hours ahead of the time that you're sitting in, Joe. So that means Shane Greenland, it is what? 3:10 in the morning?
He hasn't gone to bed yet.
Go to bed.
That's
Go
right.
to bed, Shane. We love you, but go to bed.
Look,
Okay?
it's warm there, Jimmy. It's a different conversation.
That's
You don't have to walk in 4 degrees below zero to get to anywhere. That's the issue.
Yeah, it's a different kind of heat. That's right. I forgot. It's a different kind of heat. It's a dry heat. Actually, it's a wet heat. Is it wet or is it humid? It's something like
Whatever it is.
But anyway, whoever would love to jump in, just quickly share that, yes, I have a story to tell. Remind us again whether you want to be on camera or just audio. We know it's early. I mean, look at Joe. Please don't come on here wearing a goofy hat like Joe's wearing this morning. So,
jeez, see, this is not how you make people feel comfortable, Jimmy.
these are moments. I'm having a moment right now. I don't think
nothing, man. Lucky I don't walk across. I can't get to you right now. That's the problem. You're safe.
That's right. Yeah, but we would love to hear from people. But
I think that we would love to. If you have a story that you want to tell, or and a moment that has impacted you as an educator, where you've had a connection with a kid, or someone's had a connection with you. Here's the really interesting thing about the work that we do is that we don't get the immediate gratification in the work that we do. Right? Like, have you ever had a kid come back to you? Like 15 years after he had you as a teacher, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I loved your class. I loved your class." And you want to say, "Man, you could have said something. You could have said something, anything, right?" Yeah. But they don't. We don't get the immediate gratification. So we got to create these opportunities and understand that if we lean into these opportunities, if you can lean in every day and actually seek these opportunities out, there's a better chance for you to actually feel good about the work that you do.
That's right. It's funny, Joe, you say that because you're absolutely right. And in fact, the kid who comes back and tells you that is the same kid that skipped your class all the time.
Absolutely.
Came late, right? And then they say how much they loved your class because that means you did something right? Right? You didn't use sarcasm when they entered the room. You didn't say, "Hey, it's so glad you could finally join us today," or something. Right? They're excited to see them. "Hey, we're so glad you're in our class, and I'm so glad to see you today," and those types of things. And we know that words matter, right? We know that. And the short term, long term, Joe, you just talked about, again, so true. I think the toughest thing about our profession is it is a lot about short term. We don't get to see the moment at that moment. And we have to believe, right? We have to have hope. We have to have faith that what we're doing is making a difference. Mm-hmm. And so we got to think long term, because I do worry about a lot of our educators when they don't see the results right away. That short term can quickly lead to burnout.
Yeah.
And because we're not seeing the results, so we begin to believe that it isn't making a difference. Mm-hmm. And we have to believe it is. And especially for kids, I think about, a lot of places that I go to right now, Joe, a lot of students in the population, I'm going to use the word transient, right? They're kind of in, they're out for many, many different reasons. And I can see, right, when a teacher is working with a student and they're making some results, right? They're putting in extra time, they're giving up their preps, they're giving up their lunches, and they're putting all this extra time, and they do this, right? And they begin to see the results. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, one day, the student's gone, just like that, right? And so I can imagine that, right? So it happens, and then it happens again. And over time, eventually what begins to happen is that shift changes, right? And then one day, the teacher begins to think, well, why am I going to put in all this time when the student isn't even going to be here? Mm-hmm. And I think that's when that moment changes in our work that we do with kids. And it's not that we're necessarily quitting on kids. It's like we have these experiences, and that's why it's important to remember that everybody has these experiences. And that's why we shouldn't be judging kids or adults or putting labels on the kids or the adults, because we do that all the time, and we know that. And anyway, so yeah, I do get worried about our teachers that just give so much and give so much. So Joe, I do not see anybody volunteering here this morning that wants to tell a story, but I have to believe Brian McCann, if you are still on this show, I have been to your, buddy, I know you've got stories. I've heard your stories over dinner. I've seen you in person. I've not been to your school, but I see pictures of your school all the time. You got a bazillion stories. So I don't know if you want to share one with us this morning or not. We certainly don't want to put people on the spot, but I got to be serious. I want to listen to Joe talk. I just don't want to listen to myself talk anymore. So,
you don't want to listen to me talk?
Yeah. Oh, look,
Amy.
A story.
Get Amy in here.
Amy, We'll get you in, Amy.
Yep.
Let us know whether you want to be on camera, Amy, if that's okay. But if you want to be on camera too, we'd love to have you on camera as well. But if not, voice will work just as well. So.
All right. Perfect. We got a couple people lined up. That's fantastic.
All right. Brian says he'll take the rest. So, Brian, you hold on. We'll go with Amy. We'll come back, and then we'll hear from Brian McCann as well. So, Amy, thank you so much for jumping in and sharing your story here. So, you should be getting a link here. There's the link right there for you, Amy. If you click on that, you should be on the show here in a couple minutes.
So one of the things that I think about when we try to lean into those conversations is that we just don't know which one that people are going to talk about. And I think sometimes when I remember when I was teaching, one time I was really frustrated with a kid, just really frustrated with it when I was teaching second grade. And the young man, he just wouldn't listen to anything that I had to say during a day. And we were, I was going through the day, and he was just one of these kids that just needed a little bit more attention than most. And so. And I was just really frustrated. At the end of the day, he said, "Bye, Mr. Sanfilippo," and I just kind of gave him a little head nod as he went out. And it just makes me sick thinking about it, because that was on a Friday. On a Monday, I got a note from the secretary saying that he had moved to a different school. So the last interaction that I had with this second grade kid was me giving him a head nod and not being in the moment with them. And to this day, I feel bad about that interaction. I have no idea where he is, but if he's telling a story about a second grade teacher who didn't care when he left the room, that's totally on me, 100% on me, because I was so frustrated by the end of the day that I wasn't present and engaged for him in the moment when I should have been there the most. And I think we got to be really cognizant of that all of these interactions have the opportunity. So I think that's a conversation that we really need to get kids to consider.
Yeah, I think that's where it's really hard, right, for a lot of educators right now, because they do have to be on all the time.
Right. It's exhausting, Jimmy. It's exhausting.
Yeah, and the truth of it is, it's physically impossible to be on all the time. And I do think that's where our families, our parents, and our kids, it is important that they give their teachers a little bit of grace. We know that sometimes things happen that we don't even realize we did it, right? I didn't even realize that that's how I responded. But I think sometimes, like you, Joe, we walk away from that. And so I think that the idea is to circle back, right? To circle back and say, hey, this morning, I know when you walked away, let me just apologize. I was just at the moment wasn't where I needed to be, and I feel like I ignored it. So thank you, and have that conversation. So, good morning, Amy. How are you?
Good morning. How are y'all?
We're doing great.
Thanks so much for coming in today. We appreciate it.
That's right. We're excited about this story about this. Is it a third grader, Amy? Is that what you said? Or third grade teacher. Third grade teacher.
Thanks so much for coming in today. We appreciate it. Oh, man.
Happy to be here.
Great.
All right.
Tell us your story.
So I was born and raised in the same small town of Waco. And way into my career, around the 20th year, we'll say.
We got to get,
And I became a principal. And when I was looking at the campus staff before I went to meet them, I was looking at all the teachers, and I saw a picture, and I was like, no. So, you zoom in, right? On the iPad, you zoom in, you're like, it was my third grade teacher. So I was now going to be her principal.
Oh.
Okay. So I went to the meet and greet. And they introduced me as Dr. Perez, and I met everybody, et cetera, et cetera. So when it was over, she came up to me and said, "Dr. Perez." To which my response was, "Yes, ma'am."
Yeah, right.
And she said, "I believe I'm just going to call you Amy."
Mm-hmm.
To which I said, "Yes, ma'am." So it was a great moment. Not that I was caught up in the title or the role, but it really was a great moment to kind of help me remember that we're all real people. We're not our roles. We're not our titles. She had a huge positive impact on me. And my goal was to have a similar positive impact on her as her leader. So It's definitely a core memory of mine.
Good. That's really cool.
Amy, you see the note in the chat room right there? If you can pause your live YouTube, you should be able to still stay on and have the conversation here. That's really cool, Amy. You see the note in the chat room right there?
I don't. I just see the private chat. I can't.
Oh, go to the comments right next to it. See if there's one next to it.
Okay, let me see. I see it now.
Okay.
I don't. I just see the private
There you go.
chat.
Quick-
I don't
quick
know how
pause.
to do that.
No worries, Amy.
All right.
Don't worry
Sorry.
about it.
That's no
Sorry,
worries.
I'm
at all.
new.
Thanks so much for coming in and sharing your
I'm
story.
only 1 cup in. I'm only 1 cup in.
Amy, I love your initials though, AMP, because you are amped
Amped
this
up.
morning, girl. You
Amped
are
up.
this morning.
You talk to me, you're going to get amped up.
Thanks so much, Amy. We appreciate it. Thanks for being part of the conversation.
Joe, it's so funny that Amy said that. I remember I took my first leadership role at age 26. I remember a teacher telling me, son, I've been teaching longer than you've been alive. That's not good, right? That's not
That's
good.
right. Well, yeah, I think, and you know what's really interesting. Hey, Brian, how you doing, man?
Doing great.
That's not good, right? That's not good.
Yeah, right. All right, there you go. So here's the thing that we need to understand about all of this from a leadership perspective is that, you know, that we're going to lead people that have just started in the profession. We're going to lead people that have been in the profession way longer than we have. And the question becomes, do you care about and can you interact in that moment with all of these groups? Because they're all coming from a different perspective. And then it's important to understand that everybody's A to B is different, and nobody moves to B unless you value their A, wherever their A is. So if you don't know them and how they got to that position, then how are we really expecting to move them forward in any capacity? So I think that's a really big deal in terms of the work that we do. And I hope that we can continue to have these conversations and stories moving forward. I know Brian's got one. Brian, how you doing, man?
Yeah, doing great here on this Sunday here. It's funny, we're talking kind of about that human capital management part, how are you going to elevate your people up in the building? I'm actually going to talk to some people through the Wallace Foundation on Wednesday about it. I don't really know how that's going to go, but they asked me to talk to them. So that's what we're going to do. And just like this one, to tell some stories. Something happened last week at my school, which I thought was, maybe we don't have half my face here. There we go.
Good. Thank you, man.
That was the bad half there. So last week, you know, we've come off a blizzard and an ice storm here, and then you know, the tensions are all high. The state just lifted the mask requirement to begin on end of the month after we have a break coming up in a week here. But anyway, so we had our annual return of Dancing with the Teachers. Yeah, we couldn't have it last year because you're going to have anything last year. But we had it. And when they first asked me, you know, oh, can we try it again? You know, inside I'm like, oh, another thing we can't. But nope. I smile. I say, sure. Why don't we put a plan together and let's make it happen? So we had more participation from teachers in the middle school and the high school than ever before. We had 17 couples, but the student had to, you know, approach it, you know, an educator and invite them, and then they had to set up the rehearsals and choreograph the thing, and then there's people backstage doing lighting and sound and all. It was the most, and this is my third time doing it, and I was very humbled to be asked here. And I'm not the most talented dancer, but I can smile right during the number. It was the most incredible experience, and not because of the numbers were good, and they all were really fabulous. It was two things. First of all, what backstage was like was this whole. It was a whole microcosm of respect. With people. It didn't matter what your title was. It didn't matter what your role was officially in the district here. Everyone was working together on one project, and we laughed, and it was a great time, the dress rehearsal, and then the actual performance. It was the actual performance. We had to delay it 25 minutes because the line went out of the school building down the road to come in. So we had on a Thursday night almost 600 people in the auditorium, like cheering like it was American Idol in a way. I mean, it was Swansea, Massachusetts, Dancing with the Teachers. It was a great, but we will benefit from those reverberations for weeks. So I had I like a teacher who I never hear from an email, like never, like an under the radar, never says too much about. She wrote me the most beautiful note about what a sense of community we've created here at Joseph Case High School because of Dancing with the Teachers. But the neat thing was one of the acts, and have to have a little grace, had a live snake in it. Okay, it was for about 10 seconds, but there was a live snake, and they had a snake handler backstage. And again, they asked me if we could do it, and I was like, well, I guess so. It wasn't going to come in contact with anyone. I went to go see the snake, so I was backstage at the dress rehearsal with the snake and the handler, who I didn't, I just smiled and said, "How are you?" And she said, you don't remember me?" And I was like, I'm good with names. I said, "No," but she started like the first syllable of her name. I'm like, "I know exactly who you are." And I told her class was in it, and she was actually in a bigger city when I was out of college. I did like a year of long-term sub. She was like in a 7th grade in an urban school that I was predominantly in, and I knew her from then. And what she said, and she said 2 things to me. She says, I forgot what a special place this was for these kinds of events to happen. And her sister-in-law that was with her said, "I wish I went to this school."
Mhm.
Huh? That was so. I mean, these are non-classroom things. But it's all about the relationships. It's the ones that you formed, that you couldn't have this if you didn't form them. And then again, we'll feel the reverberations for this for weeks. And the dance company made like a pile of money. It will fund everything they want to do this year,
Good.
and they'll have a little kitty for next year.
Good.
So it's a simple story. Again, it's not about academics. It's not about getting data from the state level, but I think it's reflective of a school. I think it's human data that shares the experience. So that's my little story for today.
Yeah.
And I think it was awesome. And I came in 3rd. I was like, really? 3rd?
That's right. I was just going to ask about that.
2nd? No, 3rd.
Well, that's actually what I was going to ask you until you said at no point until the very last thing that you said did you talk about the results of the dance competition.
Yeah.
It was all about the backstage conversations.
Yeah.
It's not always about prom, graduation,
Right.
homecoming, all that stuff. Sometimes it's about the conversations that happen, at prom, graduation, and in the hallways as we're just walking down the hallways, right? You just never know when those interactions are going to matter.
Yeah. They met at all that rest. I won my medal the whole day. I said, "Well, if you're going to give me accessories, I'm going to accessorize on Friday there." So anyway, that's my little story. Thanks, guys. It was I get to sleep in a little bit. It's 8 o'clock here, but it's snowing. It's snowing here. Yeah.
Is it? We probably sent it to you.
Wisconsin.
I said we probably sent it to you. Wisconsin.
Yeah.
We just
Right,
send you guys
right.
stuff. It's ridiculous.
Anyway, thanks for this. This fills my cup for the weekend,
Okay.
and so I enjoyed it last week. I'm here on week 2 here.
I
So
appreciate
thanks,
that,
gentlemen. I appreciate you very much there.
Thanks, Brian.
Hey, Brian, real quick before you take off, just let me share something with you. I think on that is, you mentioned the idea of, this dancing thing, like, well, maybe I'm not a really good dancer and, should I go, should I participate? Dan Kelly wants to know if you sang to a Britney Spears song. Dan already giving you a hard time on there, but
Yeah, it was a Britney Spears.
I bet it was.
They won the snake. The snake. It wasn't exactly dancing with the snake, but
Of course, the snake's gonna win. Of course,
20 minutes. Yeah, they stacked the deck with that. They also had people in those like Cirque du Soleil. You jump up and it was acrobatics. I mean, it's not just the Charleston.
you're not ready for that. It's not. That's not your game, huh?
But
You should
Brian,
be happy with 3rd then.
that's right. Brian, you know what I think? I think part of it also was the fact that you gave your time.
Yeah.
And I do think that is one of the most valuable gifts that we can give other people is our gift of time. The fact that you showed up, the fact that you participated, the fact that you were willing to give your time to spend time again with students or families or parents or the community. You mentioned in there about this community feeling, right? And it really is about building community and how intentional are we being in building community. And we do know, right, that every time we bring a group of people together, we have an opportunity to build community.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what you did. And like you said, the reverberations that you're going to experience there for days or maybe even weeks and probably years, Brian. And kudos to you. And thank you for what you do. We know how difficult it is to lead organizations today. And you're one of the best, my friend. So thank you.
Thank you.
Stopping by.
Anyway, happy Sunday.
You're right.
Bye.
Thanks so much
All
for
right,
coming
take
in. We
care.
appreciate it. Take care.
Hey, Joe, there were 2 things there we were kind of talking about and, just making the point of, in the first one, you were talking about the idea of how, maybe you didn't lead that conversation the way you wanted to lead that conversation, Joe.
Mm-hmm.
But I do know this is that it is a reminder that circling back is a strategy for building culture, right? And I think our pacing of our job is so quick sometimes that we forget that just a quick circle back to check in, to either acknowledge or maybe in this case, even apologize, right, is a powerful, powerful culture builder. And you often talk about, hey, It shouldn't take 3 to 5 years to build culture, people. We can build culture 30 seconds at a time.
Yeah.
And that is a culture builder. So circle back is a strategy. If you try to use it this week, be really intentional in circling back. It's a powerful, powerful strategy for building culture.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing, it's a reminder too. And I was in a school this week, Joe, and I was interviewing some people. And one of the things that came through really clearly, and again, this is a reminder. So if we're a teacher going into a building for the first time, or you could be a teacher just switching grade levels, or you are a principal going into a building for the first time. It was a reminder again, and there was some, I'm going to call them some cultural undercurrents, right? There was some cultural undercurrents in the organization already. But as I was interviewing the staff, one of the things that came through really clear was this, is that, first of all, I do believe the principals do the very best they can when they walk into a building. Number two, we talked about this. There are so many skills required today to lead an organization, and none of us have all those skills, right? We talked about this last week. They basically hand you the keys and tell you to go run a school.
Go lead. Yep, absolutely.
And this is why it's a reminder, superintendents that may listen to the show, if you are hiring principals, or principals if you are hiring teachers, it's a reminder to us is that we have to remind our people that when we go into a classroom or a school or a campus for the very first time, that we have to honor the history and the stories that came before us.
Mm-hmm.
And when we don't do that, people can be hurt by that.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost it's like we just can't forget about what just happened. You know, I had a principal here, even though they're only here 2 years, I cared about that principal. There are stories that have been shared. There are experiences that have been shared. They've been there through their divorce. They've been there through the death of a child. They've been there through a tragedy. And regardless of how effective or ineffective that leader was, when they leave, they take something with them.
Mm-hmm.
And if we don't acknowledge that when we come in, it's almost like, once again, that we devalue those stories and we don't honor that. So I think it's a reminder again, that is why our investment of time to understand those stories and those relationships is so critical. So remember that as you go back into your schools. Are we honoring the people that came before us? Because those people, those individuals had experiences with those individuals too. And we need to remember that. So it just reminded me as Brian and you were talking about it.
I couldn't agree more. And the idea that we want to keep in mind here is you don't honor tradition by keeping things the same. You honor tradition by giving those who came before you something to cheer about now. So how can you make sure that everything that was valued in the past gets the chance to be highlighted at some point? Because if you want to have a connection, remember, we have to remember that 80% of the voting public don't have kids in school, right? So if these are the people that are talking about the moments that happened to them 20 years ago, why wouldn't we want to actually come back to those moments that were good? You know, I mean, little things like Throwback Thursday on your Facebook page. I mean, little things like that honor, just taking out, we work with Social School for EDU, which is a phenomenal company that does a lot with making sure that the stories that get out there. And one of the things that's been really impactful for us is just taking old yearbooks, taking pictures and posting them on Thursday as a Throwback Thursday and asking people about, you know, what was going on in that picture. Because this brings everybody back together towards a common, you know, movement. And I think that if we can continue to do that from a leadership role, we develop some momentum. Because that of all the things that we need right now, we need some momentum. I feel like a lot of our people are just always feel like we're literally crawling up the hill every day. And if we could just get some momentum, we don't need to be up the hill. Can we just make it a little bit flat for a little bit? That'd be okay too. But just to keep people moving. And sometimes those things that when we can honor tradition, that gives us an opportunity to really think about how we can move things forward.
Joe, you just gave me an idea as you were talking. So people who know me know that I love to do like different types of community builders, right? I think they're powerful, right? Because it gives people a chance, again, to tell stories, to bring people together. And we know the more that people know other people's stories, the reason that's so critical is because when we know people's stories, it creates this thing called empathy, right? All of a sudden, you know, I do think it impacts gossip and judgment in a different way, because all of a sudden, because I've heard Joe's story a little bit, I hear somebody else talk about Joe. I want to protect Joe because I'm like, but you don't, you know, I've heard his story, right? Like, I'm not sure I agree with that, right? Like, I know him a little bit, right? And so that's why it's so important that we do that. So anyways, you were talking about that. I had an idea about a community builder right now, and that is, wouldn't it be kind of cool at a next staff meeting if we brought out yearbooks from the previous years and just put them on the tables and asked people to start going through the yearbooks and find something in the yearbook and then give them an opportunity to tell that story. Because I got to believe there are some amazing stories in our schools, and I'm sure there's sad ones, but I also know there's really funny ones. And I know there's also ones that made a huge impact and a difference. Plus, you're allowing people who haven't been there very long to understand a little bit more about the history, and they see these connections.
Yeah.
And that's powerful as well, right? I was in a building this week, and they started having these conversations. Like, I just asked him, I said, so remind me again. And he shares this. And I'm like, he goes, yeah, you didn't know that? Like, when I took this job, Dr. So-and-so didn't get the job, but now they're in that position. I'm like, that makes sense. Like, I never realized that. Like, there's all these connections that we don't even realize. So anyway,
if you start having I love that activity, and I've never done that. That's a great activity. It's a great idea, Jimmy. And the thing that I thought about as soon as you said it was, in small towns like ours, like, the thing that would end up happening is you get the yearbooks out there, you start having a conversation, and somebody would tell a story that was going on, and 5 people around the auditorium or 5 people around the library would go, I remember that. I was there for that. That's not really what happened. Here's what really happened.
I was just going to say,
that is really what happened.
A different version of what happened, right?
Right?
That's right.
And what a great connection to that. On Friday, we celebrated our 50 years of girls basketball here in Fall Creek. So we had the 6 of the 7 1,000-point scorers come back and get introduced, and did some dogs. And our coaches from the past were here. And some of the people that are 1,000-point scorers here are working here right now too. So what a cool thing for them to come back. They're here all the time, but in a different capacity, and then see people or kids that they've had or haven't had yet or will have in the future as teachers or in the office or whatever the case may be, just being able to see them in a different light. And that starts the conversation for something different, which is really cool.
Yeah. Hey, I see Ashley Kappelman is on here. Ashley, good morning from Kansas. All the way from Kansas, Ashley. Hey, you know where Ashley lives?
Where?
She lives where Dorothy lives from The Wizard of Oz. Ashley, I don't know if you're interested, but we would love to have you jump in this morning just for a couple minutes. Let me know if you'd be interested in doing that. Please don't feel obligated or pressured, but of course, put you on the spot. So
right. That's right.
Ashley, if not, we'll look for someone else here, but Ashley, let us know. But look, Joe, I actually had one idea that a couple people said, well, I think I'll try that. So
it's about
every now and then, Joe, I feel like I've contributed to the show.
Yeah, well, it's about time. We're
done.
You haven't done anything yet, so this is a good thing. It's fantastic. It's good.
No, I'll see you later. I'm done for the day. I mean,
you're not leaving. You're the reason we're doing this at 7:00. You sit out. You sit out. You sit down, because I wouldn't be up at 7:00 if you didn't tell me we were doing this thing at 7:00. Relax. Get back on camera.
My bad. All right. Ashley, let us know if you're willing to jump in, my friend, camera or voice. We would love to hear from you from the Wizard of the land of the Wizard of Oz, Ashley. I want to hear that story. How does that happen?
Right,
and who says that Liberal is where the Wizard of Oz took place? I think they just grabbed it and owned it, right? So who knows that? So
there's the thing that I keep coming back to, and that activity that you said with the yearbook, and just everything that we do when it comes down to the interactions is, are we really leaning into the moment? And what are we doing? We talked last week about putting yourself in the right mindset to recognize the moment and what that really looks like. But I think if we just continue to think about the impact of what those moments are, and the idea that one of the things that we talk about here is that, there are 960 30-second opportunities in an 8-hour day, right? 960 of them. So I'm not telling people to take 825 of them and do something different with. I'm saying if you take two, if you go next door to the teacher next door, and instead of talking about scheduling and things that you're struggling with, which you have to do, how often are we going next door and saying, I just taught a really great lesson and I feel really good about it. I want to talk about that. We don't share that stuff, right? So how are we making sure that we provide an opportunity to do that? Because a lot of times it's like, how can we fix? How can we fix? How can we do? How can we do? How can we get to the next thing? Instead of taking a step back and realizing the impact of all those interactions. So I think that's a big piece in terms of what that we're doing. So I think if we can kind of lean into those conversations, we're going to feel better about the work that we do.
That's right. Ashley says she's going to jump in. She says, I'm not camera ready this morning, Jimmy, but I am voice ready. So we'll.
All right.
I think the link is there in the chat box. So we'll see you here in a minute or so. Joe, when you said take two, you know what I thought you were going to go with? And it just reminded me another idea, right? The whole take two, right? A 5x2. I don't know if anyone has ever heard of something. Some people call it 10x2, 5x2, 3x2. It doesn't really matter. Anything by two. But the idea is a 5x2 is a framework, and it serves as a reminder that every week, so here's a challenge this week. If anybody wants to take on the 5x2 challenge, that means you have to meet with 5 kids this week, which basically be 1 kid a day, or it can do 2 or 3 for 2 minutes, and give your time and be really intentional and create a moment for a student or a faculty member and give them 2 minutes. So create your 5x2 framework, grab an individual on Monday, take 2 minutes, and just start talking to them and give them their individual time that's just their time for 2 minutes. So if you're a classroom teacher, you can implement a 5x2 in your classroom and start grabbing a kid every day and pulling them out in the hall or pull them over to the side of the room and just having a conversation for 2 minutes, because the idea is to see and understand their experiences, but to see it through their eyes, right? To see the culture of your classroom through the students' eyes, and principals to see the culture of the building through the eyes of the teachers and the staff, not just through our eyes. So maybe like a 5x2 framework or something like that, or a take two, right?
I agree.
Oh, take 2 minutes. So
Look at
Ashley from Liberal, Kansas. Good morning, my friend.
She's coming.
She's coming.
All right. No, she's not. She's
like,
gone.
oh, I'm not coming. I'm out.
That's
I'm out. It's a little technical difficulty. She'll give it an opportunity to hear it again in a second.
All right. We'll come back to it. But one of the things that we've talked about in the past, Jimmy, is like, think about all either the kids that you're struggling with in your classroom, and how often are you actually sitting down and having a conversation with them, not about class at all. Like if you take 3 days in a row and just have a 5-minute conversation or a 2-minute conversation with somebody that you're struggling with the most in your classroom, does that change the perspective on how, how those interactions, work out? And we do the same thing with adults too. If you're struggling with adults, how often are you having like consistent conversations with where they're coming from? Because that's helpful too.
And the fact that it's intentional and formal, there is a difference sometimes to be really intentional. That formal conversation, that means it's just you in the moment with that student or that staff member. So Ashley, welcome back, my friend. Good morning. She's like, I don't want to turn this camera on, but I'm not quite sure what's happening with my voice and my microphone here this morning. So
that's all right. We'll get her in. That'd be great.
Ashley, when you're ready, you just chime in. Then we'll
start talking.
And we'll
start talking. And Jimmy will stop talking, which is good for everybody on this thread. So we're good.
I'm taking a look at the comment by Aaron. I want to take a look at these comments. You see what Aaron's comment says? I'm just taking a look at this right now.
Yeah. Absolutely. We do this a lot, right? We do this a lot where we feel like we're getting burned out because we don't get the immediate gratification behind, all those interactions. And it's great to say, well, we got to just continue to hope it's going to be, but you want some gratification for this work. You want to know that it has an impact. And if we can be the connector to that, I think there's there's definitely a better chance for those stories to be told. And I think as the leader in the space, we can really help that process by making sure that our minds are open to seeing the great things that are happening, but not only seeing the great things that are happening, but making sure that the people who are being talked about when we're having these conversations know that they're being talked about. If you're having a conversation with a kid about one of their favorite teachers or something that they're doing that's, that they did today that's really great, please make sure that you go back to the teacher that was being talked about to make sure that they know that they were being talked about, because that changes the way that we move things forward. So I think that's a big deal to do. If we talk about extending the conversation a lot. So that's been pretty helpful for us. So.
All right. I see Ashley still hanging in there with us, Ashley. I saw a little light pop up.
Right. She's afraid you're going to ask her.
We're going to be Ashley's champion this morning. We're not going to quit on her. We're going
no
on her. She can do it. Ashley, you can do this, Ashley.
Right. Get in. Jimmy, you were talking before about the idea that if we can continue to carry the banner for the work that happens in the space. And one thing that I thought about when you said that is when excuse me, when we put ourselves in a position to make sure that we own the banner, right? Like we'll carry a banner that we own, right? It's harder to carry a banner that you don't have any influence on or that you don't feel that you're part of. So when you say carry the banner of your school, what is that? How do you make sure that the banner that you're carrying feels like it's our banner as opposed to the banner that hangs above a school, when you walk in it?
That's awesome. Look at Tim. Tim is from Maine, Joe. Look at he's talking about the Monday motivation. So I'm taking a look at that as well. So if you guys got ideas, things, community doing in your school, throw them in there so people can take a quick picture of it. Obviously, it's being recorded. And these are ideas so we can help one another in our schools as we go back. So great idea on the community builder. So Ashley is still kind of back in there, I think, maybe.
Come on, Ashley. We got you. And go. No. All right.
I don't know if it's on her. I think it's on her end. I don't think the technical difficulty. It could be, though. It could be.
Yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there. I appreciate her willingness to come back.
Brilliant. This is just like the Wizard of Oz. She's on the yellow brick road. She's trying to find her way into the studio. She'll find her way. She'll find her way.
Good.
Actually, don't worry. No one's gonna know. And then she says, "They're gonna know. They're gonna know. They're gonna know." So, hey, so here's another community builders. While we're talking community builders, Joe, and the idea of carrying the banner. So one thing, I know our teachers right now, right, could use a little pick me up. So if you're a school leader or a teacher, it doesn't make a difference right now. But one activity that maybe consider is to maybe meet with some students and just ask them, hey, who is an adult in this school that is championed for you? Who is an adult that has made an impact with you or made a difference? And ask them to write down a few things. In other words, share that story. Wouldn't that be cool if we could allow those students then in a faculty meeting or some event to then share that impact that the teachers have had on them? So maybe be really intentional in asking students to share some ways that a teacher has made a difference and deliver that letter or deliver those notes or deliver a video to a teacher just to make their day and remind them, hey, hang in there because what you're doing matters and it's making a difference. So
then you know what? Extend that as well. Like impact that as well and send that to somebody outside of school that's connected to the teacher. Because what ends up happening a lot is people are at school every day and they don't know the impact because you don't get that immediate gratification. And then they go home to the people that they care about the most. But the people that they care about the most don't go through all the stuff that they go through throughout the course of the day. Doesn't mean that they love them any less, but it just means that they don't truly understand what happens. So when you can connect what's happening at school to the people that are at home, there's a better chance for people to walk with value in both places. Awesome. Ashley's back.
Ashley! Woo!
No, she's not.
She's out. No worries, Ashley.
That's all right, Ashley. We'll get you. We'll get you at some point. That's okay. We want to keep working. Oh, I think we got her. I think this is the one right here. Ashley, what do you think? Are you there?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes. Come on now. Come on. Where's that audio?
Oh, she's just teasing us now.
Man, she's just getting her story straight because she knows you're going to ask her a tough question. That's how it works. There you are. All right, Ashley, we got you. We got you. Tell us what you're thinking about.
Okay, so you guys sound like, this is hilarious. You guys sound like mice. Can you, but I can hear you. Can you repeat the question again real quick? Sorry.
Just tell us what you're thinking about you and joining us today, some of the moments that have made the most impact on you.
Okay. So yeah, and by the way, it's great to join you guys this morning and just to hear these ideas. And I loved hearing about the dancing with the teachers and the backstage moments, and just enjoying the moment. I was just talking to our leadership team last week about how hard our job is. Can you guys still hear me? Okay.
Yep, absolutely. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, and just how important it is to just pause and look around and just kind of put ourselves on the balcony and watch and just remember why we love what we do and love who we serve. And I say love because love is hard rather than just enjoying things. Love takes some work, but I think it's just important just to kind of step back sometimes and watch kids as they interact with each other and they do nice little things for each other, and teachers as they're helping a kid with something that's not even class related, but just something that makes their day better. And I think that those moments are so important, and so important for all of us in the building to do, because again, it's so easy in a day just to get wrapped up in all of the whirlwind and the tornado, I suppose. I'll use the Dorothy's reference, with all that's going on.
Yeah.
That is awesome, Ashley. You know what I love, Ashley? I love how the people in the chat box are cheering you on, Amy. Or Ashley, that's awesome. So I love this community. I love people just sharing, people need to pick me up sometimes. And maybe it's a great way to start a Monday, right? Or to get to start the week. So
yeah, taking a step back and looking on the balcony, that's a great way to think about it, because we don't. We just go, do, right? We talked about that last week. So giving the people that you lead, the people that you serve, the opportunity to take a look at the stuff that's going on around them and the impact that it has is really, truly important. It's not just about, that's not just from a school perspective. That happens in the classroom too. How often are we having that conversation with our kids instead of just going, well, here's the next thing, here's the next thing, here's the next thing.
That's right. Absolutely. Ashley, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ashley.
For us this morning, my friend. And you take care. And we're sending you lots of positive thoughts. And thank you so much. My favorite part is when she goes, you guys sound like mice.
You too.
I can feel like mice in the background.
That's right.
I hope you
That's
guys
not
have
good. Thanks, Ashley. Have a great week. Okay, take care.
Take care. Hey, Joe, I saw, I think it was Amy up here in the chat box talked about a smile file. I'm reading that one. That's cool too. I like that idea, right? The smile file. So for those of you who are watching at home, maybe you're checking us out today. I do think there's value there. That as a community builder as well. So
absolutely, and just keeping that around, because sometimes we just want to take a step back and honestly smile a little bit, because the job gets to be really hard. Here's the thing that's important about that. You have to be willing to actually do it. If you put a bunch of stuff in a smile file and it just sits there, it's not doing anybody any good. When you're having a tough day, lean into yourself a little bit and go back to it and remember why you do what you do. Because if you wake up every morning and you realize your purpose, you realize why you're there, you're going to have there's a much better opportunity for you to be productive in that moment.
That's right. Take a look at Sue's. That's right, Sue. People have written letters to staff, to the families of staff members, and also pick up the phone and call. And what a powerful thing to do, to call a spouse or a family member and say, hey, I don't know if you've ever seen your son or daughter or spouse teach, but what an amazing woman or individual this person is. And again, it's just being intentional. I think that's really what it is, Joe. It's just, again, that intentional, giving your time to do something intentionally. Because it's a reminder again, right? You can't wait for people to come fill your cup, right? We can fill our own cup by doing things for others. And I know right now it's really hard some days, but at the end of the day, I still believe I'm responsible for my own morale.
Right.
And if I'm not in a good place, then I need to go try to do something different to get a better result, to put myself in a better place. I can't wait for someone to come do that for me. Yeah. And so I think sometimes we just have to remember that, as difficult it is, but at the same time, we also want to remind people it is okay to tell people I need some help or I'm not in a good place, because sometimes we just need that as well. So
building capacity helps everybody in that spot. And I think that's important in terms of how we move everybody forward together. Some really great ideas coming through. I love Sue's idea of calling a spouse or a parent. I love Lynn's idea of sending 3 voice texts, on the way home. I have to do that too. I have to make sure that before I head into the house that I do something positive, make sure that I'm present and engaged for the people that I'm with, wherever that is, right? How can you flip the mindset of where you're at? Because we just go through a lot of stuff throughout the course of the day. And if you don't figure out a way to put yourself in the right mindset to see great things, you're not going to see great things.
Joe, we are coming near the end of today's show, but since we're talking about community builders and the power of moments and building or creating experiences for people to carry the banner, you got a quick community builder real quick as we go out and leave today? Any ideas on that real quick?
I think it goes back to what you were talking about. You control your own morale. You also control your own behavior. So what are you doing to put yourself in the right mindset to see the great things that are happening? And then again, we come back. I try to stay in my lane, Jimmy. I really do. We talk about the eye of recognize, acknowledge, extend. What are you doing to put yourself in the right mindset to recognize? For me, if that's writing a couple positive notes to start my day and then going to deliver those notes. It really puts me not only in the right mindset because I get out of my office to go deliver great notes to tell people that they're doing a great thing. But the other thing that it does is it changed my mindset as I walk through the hallways because I know I'm going to write those notes the next day. So what are you doing to put yourself in the right mindset to see great things? Whatever it is that you do, then figure out a way to make sure that that happens on a regular basis.
And what a simple way to do that, right? And
Yeah.
it's a reminder again, what if we just grabbed our roster, right? Grabbed our roster and then began to be really intentional. So, you know what, this week I'm going to do 2 a day or 1 a day, right? I'm going to write 1 positive note and I have a roster and I can check it off. And I know that way everybody in the building gets at least 1 note or 2 notes this year. But here's the thing to remember to extend on that as well, Joe, is that there is a difference between writing a note that says, thank you so much for being here. You're a positive asset. I'm glad you're here. Have a great day. That note is going to be appreciated, right? They're going to say, oh, I'm glad they thought of me. And they're going to take that note. But here's the problem. I think that note ends up in the trash can, Joe. I think
100% agree. I 100% agree.
Right? But there's a difference between knowing people's stories and knowing their history. And that's why relationships are so critical. But it's a whole different ball game when we can write a note that says something like, hey, I just want to let you know I was going down the hallway this week and I was watching you. And we all know the issues that Stephen has had this week or this year. But I don't know what was going on in that conversation, but I was watching you with Stephen. And it was so amazing to me to see him smile because I can't remember the last time I saw Stephen smile. And I just wanted to share with you this morning how important that moment was, not just for me and it inspired me, but I have to believe that that moment for Stephen was critical. And that is what, when we talk about being a champion for kids, that is what we're talking about. Thank you so much for being a champion for the Stephens of the world. Mm-hmm. God bless you and thank you. I have a feeling that note is being pinned on the computer or on the whiteboard next to the computer, or maybe who knows? Maybe they even take it home and put it on their own refrigerator. But I bet they share that story with somebody, but they keep it.
Well,
they keep it. That's the smile file folder, right?
I agree, but just as importantly, Jimmy, is that we as the leader in that space can make sure that it gets extended too. You can write that note to the person and it's awesome and they're going to keep that note. But then what if you go and have a conversation with another teacher in the building to tell them this is what you saw with this teacher talking to Stephen, right? Because guess what? 2 things. The first thing is the person that's doing the work with Stephen is going to feel better about the work. The second thing is a lot of people have worked with Stephen. That's right. And so now, not only are we building up a colleague, but now we're thinking, now we're modeling what it looks like to connect with kids that might have a hard time connecting.
Yeah. And we're talking about the simplest of ideas.
I agree.
Right?
I agree.
We've been writing notes to staff and students for people 50, 60, 75 years. This is nothing new. But here's the thing. But why do we stop doing that?
Because we're always trying to get to the next thing, Jimmy. There's the thing that we need to consider is that if we're always doing that, we never take a step back from it. And the system is set up for this, all right? We got to be intentional about breaking the system in terms of the work that we do, because if we just go, we never take a step back and realize the impact. So being intentional about a couple of those things, we're not talking about revamping your entire day. We're talking about literally 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes. And that changes the way that you walk through hallways. And if you do that, guess what's going to happen? You're going to model what that looks like. And when you model what that looks like, people are going to start to build momentum. And that brings it back to where we started. Because when we build momentum through moments, there's a better chance for all these moments to be talked about moving forward.
That's right. Well, Joe, I think that about wraps up our morning. Believe it or not, another hour has flown by. I want to thank Amy and Brian and Ashley for jumping in here this morning. I know a couple of people were willing to. We'll catch you hopefully next week. But again, this is what I love about this. Let's be honest. There are so many things going on in our schools today that people don't know what's going on in our schools.
Right.
And Joe and I are never going to pretend that we're going to come on here and have all these amazing ideas, because we don't. But hopefully what we're doing is just trying to remind us why we do what we do. And there are many ideas that came on here on the show this morning. And again, it's just about being intentional, giving our time to other people, circling back and honoring people's stories in the work that they do. So, Joe, I'm going to let you close it out again for the week. So thanks again, buddy. By the way, I'm going to have to do something about the heat in your office. That's what I do. That's how I'm going to give you my time this week.
Fiscally responsible, Jimmy. We're fiscally responsible in this district. We're making sure that we're making choices that are fiscally responsible, even if that means I can't feel my face or toes. It don't matter. That's what we're all about, Jimmy.
Right. That's
right.
Right.
Taxpayer money. That's what we're all about. So, hey, thank you so much for joining us today, everybody. And remember to lead with intention and be in a spot where you can really kind of create the opportunities moving forward. All these moments turn into movements if we're willing to actually lean in and talk about them. Have a great day, everybody. Take care.
God bless everybody. Take care.